the cash for player trades, I think it is going to see teams like Vancouver left behind, but I think there's a distinct two different types of teams this benefits. I think this benefits teams like Philadelphia, who have ownership groups that don't necessarily want to invest much money into the team, but have good academies and ultimately could probably have these homegrown players, like you sell a homegrown player who, you get the subsidy for them. I guarantee at some point in the future, there's probably going to be some sort of, handshake agreement or some sort of, incentive to try and keep these guys in league instead of seeing them go outside the league. So teams that generate a ton of talent and don't spend tons of money like Philadelphia, maybe even Dallas to like a lesser extent, but they at least invest in some players occasionally. And then you have teams like, say, Atlanta, or Charlotte, where the owners have insane amounts of money and are willing to spend it. I mean, Atlanta has what, four of the top five player acquisitions in terms of like league history value. So, yeah, teams like that can say, "Hey, that's a great player. We've got an open spot for them. Thanks. That's ours now."
Yeah, I really think if we want to segue into the new rules, I think what you just said is you're still going to have the guys that aren't DPS, aren't U22s, aren't homegrown guys, the middle guys, your salary cap, your TAM guys. Those guys are still going to move for allocation money. That's still going to be around, but then there's going to be clubs saying, we have a really young left back, but we have another left back on a great deal that's going to block him. And the young guy, instead of sending him to the second division in Germany, we'll sell him for 2 million to keep him in MLS, and someone else can add him as a U22 or something along those lines. Or you're going to see DPs like Evander, and you're going to start seeing the biggest clubs in Germany and France, instead of sending your scouts out to Austria or out to Belgium, you just go by the best players that aren't on your team inside of your league. So you're going to start seeing that as well. So I think that's going to be good for the league in the sense of a player like Lucho or Vander, just because they don't want to come back to their current team, losing the whole league, losing a player like that would be a little unfortunate. But if another team is interested and can give the player a better contract or whatever they're looking for, and the player can stay in the league, it's great for marketing terms instead of filtering out players every 2 years, to really start to build these players up for marketing. So I think that's interesting. I think the two buyouts is interesting to help ambitious teams take more swings, because with all of the league structures, you have to have a over 50% hit rate basically to have a good consistent roster. And you saw, just use Atlanta again. First 2 years, they hit like every signing. And then their next 2 years, when they couldn't keep them all, they missed on every signing. But getting that second buyout kind of lets ambitious clubs take more risks, and then they can quickly transition if not. So those are the two things I like so far. What else did you guys take away from the agreement? 'Cause there's actually a lot to it.
There is a lot. I think you look at, buried in there, 10% of a player's cash internal value when they get traded to another club. I think 10% of that goes as a bonus to the player, which, we love to see that little bit of extra player welfare. I mean, some of these guys don't have super long careers. So, if you're Evander and someone says, "Hey, we're gonna send you from Portland to Austin for $10 million," I mean, a $1 million bonus that's a significant amount to most people. I mean, maybe not the ownership of MLS. $1 million might be a rounding error for some of them, but
And
to these guys who are playing 10 years,
and
that's good
and
money.
that's probably more of a bonus than him going many places. Like, that's a pretty cool opportunity. Two clubs are offering 10 million for you, one in MLS, one in Brazil. you get a million more from the MLS deal that you wouldn't get from the Brazil deal. So I think that's a pretty cool bonus.
So, question for you guys, because I haven't looked into this, and so I'm sure there are a lot of listeners who haven't read through any of the articles or anything. Can you just like summarize what the cash for player stuff is? Like, I get the high level
Hmm.
gist of it, and you listed out some of the details there, but like maybe even like a specific question after just like summarizing it, like let's say you go and you buy that left back that you were talking about, Bryce, for $2 million. Is that someone that you're signing on to be like a TAM level player on your side? And does the other team get 2 million received in GAM, even though you're not paying using GAM? Because when you sell a player, you get some GAM and TAM and WHAM and BAM externally. So
Sort
internally,
of. You have the option to convert some of that money into GAM.
And you can only convert
yeah,
up to 3 million a year or something like that.
And my understanding from what I've seen of the rules and from what I've seen in the discourse is the answer would be yes. You could treat that revenue, the same as if you sold the player outside the league. So if someone says, hey, we'll give you $1 million to this player, you could look at it and say, hey, I convert that to $1 million in GAM.
so this is just going to be a GAM generating machine then almost.
No, because if you're doing that, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, hey, we could game the system. But if you're the team buying that player, you're still treating that player as though you just bought them from outside the league for, $1 million plus whatever their salary.
Right. So they're dang near a TAM player.
Yeah, and if this is, like let's say it's a Kai Wagner level left back and they're on, 700, 800,000 a year and you go say, hey, we'll give you, Philly Union will give you $3 million to this player. I mean, they're pushing DP status at that point.
Right. Okay.
Which is why I think those middle of the pack players still get moved for allocation. These are going to be moves where we don't want this U22 anymore. You want him on your U22 deal because then U22 the transfer fee doesn't affect the cap hit.
Right.
DPs, once you're at a certain point, then the transfer fee doesn't matter unless you really want to buy them down later. So I think it's only going to really work for the young guys or the expensive guys. So your question diving into it, yeah. So it works the same way as an external transfer. It's not like if you trade for allocation, you're just trading for the contract. But if you're doing this player for cash, then you're trading for the contract plus the transfer fee across the entire contract, as it would be bringing a player in. So other things added where, like, I guess I kind of learned that GAM expires every 3 transfer windows, but now GAM does not expire anymore. Another thing that's interesting is, the new rule, 3DP, you can choose to have 3 DPs, 3 U2s, or 2 DPs, 4 U22s, and 2 million GAM every year added to your budget. You can, at first, the rule was you had to pick one to start the year and keep it. But now you can switch. You can choose one, but then switch on the last day of the summer transfer window. So say Orlando, for example, they have 2 DPs right now. If, they can't get their replacement over the line, they can say, we're going to go to the 2 DP 4 U2 system. You get 1 million of those 2 million GAM to use in the first half of the year. So they could, buy down another contract. They could, help allocate the cap more. But then the summer comes, they're like, we really need a DP winger. Then you can say, we're going to the 3DP, 3U22 model, and you won't get that second million GAM, but you got to use one in the first half of the year. So a lot of flexibility added, and I think, 30 teams at MLS, it's going to make roster building really fun to follow for the MLS nerds out there. I know they found a way to still make it confusing, but I think it's a step in the right direction. You're only allowed 2 for this player for cash. It's a 2-year trial period, basically. So they're going to do this for 2 seasons, see how it works, see if teams even use it, I guess. You get 2 incoming and 2 outgoings every year to use. So we'll see how it goes. But I think
they put a limit on how many transfers you can make internal to the league with cash.
Yeah, they said
per season.
They said
2 and 2.
2 in, 2 out per season.
Yeah, which realistically, I don't
think teams get above it anyways. So
yeah, because like Bryce was saying, if this is for your high dollar value players, like let's say a team goes out and is like, oh yeah, we want to buy Evander. Okay, there's $10 million to Portland. And then, like, let's say that, I don't know, pick another, like, DP striker somewhere. Like, let's say Christian Benteke suddenly unages 4 years. And they're like, oh, yeah, we want, like, a just outside of his prime Christian Benteke at striker. We'll give you $20 million for Benteke, who magically, became younger overnight. That's $30 million. Like, they're not, in all likelihood, unless you're one of maybe 2 teams in this league, you're probably not going to go out and do a third cash transfer.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
I don't think the level of expenditure exists in MLS yet. Some teams could afford it, and even if you could, like, you're already on 2 DPs. So did you need like a third DP to bring in? Or maybe you're even just going to go for the 2 DP 4 U22 system? Yeah, I don't think teams go above 2. It just doesn't make logical sense. You'd have to be in pretty extraordinary circumstances.
Yeah, unless teams are really just like, we don't have GAM. Here's $400K for this one guy to keep him on the TAMs. I guess they want to see how it goes before they really open it up for it to be a full-time thing. A couple other things I like is they move the secondary transfer window back a little bit. Like, it goes until, I think, August 21st, and instead of being like a month before the European window closes, because that's the best window to get. That's the window where a lot of players are available. And when MLS clubs are trying to be ambitious, but then players and agents are like, we're going to say no for now because we want to see if a top 5 league or a Premier League club comes calling at the end. That kind of limits. So now they moved it to like a week and a half before. The Canadian Premiership makes it really hard on MLS, because I think they would love to try to mirror the European window, but the Canadian clubs aren't about it. I think that'll be good. And then I think the last thing I want to hit on is you can now loan designated player DPs off your roster, and they won't count as a DP. Like I said, you can take more swings now. You sign a DP, doesn't work out. Like I remember even Ezequiel Barco didn't work out. But when you loaned him, you didn't lose the spot. So it's like, all right, are we loaning him just to free up how much we have to pay a player that's not, crushing it for us, or are we doing it because we want flexibility? And now it's because now you can have flexibility. We can loan a DP not winning it, like a Carlos Gruzo for San Jose, for example. Guys like that, you can loan last year of the contract, just get it off the books, and you can go in a new direction. So a lot changed, and I think a lot of it was good for the league to progress. A lot changes every window. I'm here for it. I want structure at some point, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, and I think while we're all very positive on this, all of us being Bryce and myself, I think most people also recognize that there's still a lot of room for improvement that the league could commit to. I mean, they're good steps. The league has not historically been a quick-paced league in terms of making changes to the way that roster construction works and the way that the league functions as a whole. So the baby steps are, I think, the best we're going to get, and that they took as many as they did this window. We'll take the small victories when you can get them.
For the record, I'm not against this.
I thought you were going to say, Gavin,
you're just giving me a hard
for
time.
the record, I knew all of this.